Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of For What It's Nerd. Today, we are here to discuss a number of topics, including Andor Season 2's finale, Superman, the new Superman trailer, the Ironheart preview, Jessica Jones coming to Daredevil Season 2. And that's kind of like going to be the episode. We've got quite a broad, it's a very comic booky apart from Andor, very comic booky week this week. But we also have Tater with us today. Tater, hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello,
Nice
welcome back. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you for coming. Thank you for coming and recording this with us. I'm excited to have you back for another episode. It's nice to have you back on an episode where we're talking about Daredevil again as well. So that was, I know obviously you're a big Star Wars fan, so being here for Andor as well is another good one. So let's run down that list essentially. So first off, Andor Season 2. I think everyone knows that this was just a great season of storytelling anyway, right? I don't think we need to kind of preach that. I think you very much feel the same, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was fantastic from start to finish. I think at moments it was slow, but you know what? It all paid off in the end. So that is something that I think as a society we need to get better at recognizing what is slow versus what is building tension.
Yes, yeah. And what also needs to be slow, you know, there's that whole episode where Mon is in the Senate, and that episode it's arguably the slowest episode of the show, right? But is it necessary? Yes, it is actually probably one of the best speeches in Star Wars. Now, I thought Andor already did that last season with Luthans about like I burn my life, you know, all that type of stuff in the last season. I thought that was the best speech in Star Wars, and then you get this one, right? You know, and it was so like the tension mounting, and then from there on, you get that action sequence at the end of that episode, right, with her trying to escape, and that was like probably really like the real. It was really interesting that you kind of felt Palpatine, even though Palpatine wasn't in the show, right? You felt his presence, his overarching kind of sense of like how oppressive he's made this society without him even ever showing up on screen. You know, it's funny that you have something very similar in Bad Batch where they were kind of Ryo Chuchi was in the Senate, and then all of a sudden you have Palpatine actually kind of emerge, right? So having the kind of opposite version of that, Palpatine's so disinterested in this that he just doesn't show up, right? Like he is just so uninterested. Like this is the point where the Senate is essentially, I mean, the Senate is by the end of this show about to crumble in a few days. So it's really interesting to see. One thing I will say, I actually do have a criticism of the show, and it's pretty big, and it's that I think the show should have been the 5 seasons that it was meant to be. Like, maybe not the 5, but like maybe 3. I think they could have done with having a few more arcs there for, like, especially K2. I felt like him being in those, like that episode, the final episode where you see him kind of have the fight with the Imperial, kind of like the tactical ISB team, was like really good and like really fun, but also like you saw kind of the power that a K2 droid has, and you saw the two sides of that, right? You saw the funny side of that, but you also saw the kind of menacing side of that earlier in the season. On Gorman, right? Which again, Gorman, great storyline. Just tangential, but like,
no, beautiful.
Like I kind of want more of I wanted more of that bit. I think really up until that last, I feel like I could have had a season on just the last year alone, in my opinion. I think all the other stuff kind of fit really well. I think that last 3 episodes I could have done with a little bit more of a, because I feel like you get to episode 9 or 10, and you get the Luthen kind of going and meeting Lonnie, and you feel like you feel that time passing a lot more poignantly than the others. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because I feel like you don't really know what's happened until later on when Krennic is speaking to Dedra, right? And you're like, he's got his finger on her head, which is like like, yeah. and then like you kind of get what's actually gone on, but before that you don't, you know.
Absolutely. Well, and going back to the piece where you mentioned the speech, I don't know if you've seen Rebels, but Rebels, one of the major episodes, you know, then one of the major episodes is seeing the tail end of that speech and seeing that included in actual, not that Rebels is canon. That's the cool thing about it.
But like the
live action, with the same voice actress, like it's just so
well. That's
she's played Mon Mothma for a very, very long time. in the modern Star Wars era. It's just amazing. Like she's been a major sticking point for the show for me has just been astounding. I loved, and it was one of those pieces where I'm sure people might consider it filler, but her conversation with her daughter at her wedding.
Oh no, that was a really
Communication of her
yeah.
bliss, and her
Yeah.
daughter coming back with the "I wish you were drunk" fucking
Yeah.
stabbed into my soul. I was like, oh,
There was so many parts
ouch.
of the show where there was just great dialogue between characters.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I have always preferred when Star Wars. And it's kind of counterintuitive to what everyone says real Star Wars is, but I always prefer when Star Wars goes into that political side. When one of my favorite lines from the prequels is, and so many prequel lines can be like pulled out and made into memes, etc. But the one that actually sits as like a poignant line is, "This is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause." And I think that always this reigns true to that speech, right? This is the same kind of run on of that, right? So it felt so quintessentially Star Wars, and it felt so like I didn't know. It was so good. I was there, like, the fact she was risking it all, standing there. We've seen the Senate so many times, and we've seen like what failing in the Senate can do, right? But we've never seen it where someone could die for it. Someone could be killed for it, because like prior, you've seen like Padme. Sorry.
Someone gets disappeared because
exactly.
The Gorman senator gets literally removed and said, they're coming for you next.
Yeah.
Which, one of my least favorite things about Star Wars is the community, is the fandom.
Yes.
Because, and again, there's a reason they're called the Fandom Menace.
Yes.
But in this case, people consistently make the comment, there is no politics in Star Wars. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It literally has wars in the name. There is no war without politics. Like, that is something where everyone sweeps under the rug. And yes, this season, and especially Andor in general, has continued to push the politics of all of this and the messiness and the reality of not just rebellion, but also the realism of fascism, especially in the modern era that we find ourselves in. Because that's getting more and more real, which, for the listeners who don't know, I live in the US, so that is becoming more and more prescient.
I feel like, you know what, between and I think that this one was a little bit more about timing than it was about purposefulness, so to speak. But Daredevil also did the same thing. That Daredevil's kind of the grip on truth and what people in power can do, right? You look at Fisk, it's kind of small end version. You look at Palpatine, it's like a high end version, but very much the same kind of ideals about how people are spinning narratives, how people are manipulating the system, how people are making out people to be villainous who aren't, etc. And I think, but I think what I liked about this show is actually, despite the fact I've just said I could have done with another season, I think the 5-year, it allows you to show that the Imperials were planning this for a long time. It allowed you to kind of feel that, right? You felt the long game in this season. In a way that I don't think you could have if the show was longer, if you know what I mean. Because I feel like they would have got into that later.
Details, and then people would have like missed this part. And it was one of those things where, as soon as I finished the last episode of Andor, I immediately shifted into Rogue One.
Yeah.
Mind you, the first little like 10, 15 minutes of it didn't really like apply to Andor, but the moment that we get back into, oh, this is the rings that he's going to at the end of the episode. And then there's the spy that was working for Saw, who is now clearly debilitated because of the gas that he was breathing in. All these different factors that play upon the fact that this one little character was in the movie that they've been built into a show. Just like, I was confused because I was like, who is this guy again when he first showed up? And then I rewatched Rogue One and I was like, oh my God, like this, how is he going to end up like debilitated? But Saw's also been doing that.
Yeah. I think is funny though, and I still think this is true even despite watching the season and thinking it was a great season. Andor was a vessel, like, as a character. I don't think obviously the show was about him, and obviously there was a great amount of character development for him. But I think this basically, the show should have been called like, not like we already have Rebels, but basically like Rebellion or something like that. Like because it was more about like it was an ensemble cast, really. Yes, it's called Andor, but you have episodes that just don't feature him. And actually, I think one of the more poignant episodes of the season was the one with Claire this season, where she's trying to break into the hospital, right? And she's she's trying to get to Luthen, and the reason she's trying to get to him is sad. She's trying to kill him. She doesn't even get to have a moment with him to discuss what's happened.
Which is very much prescient for their relationship, and I think that shows in those flashbacks that, oh my god, so he always has consistently had the last word. He has consistently been pushing her to this point where now that he's gone, there's not much for her left. I mean, you see the quietness that she is now embodying consistently, because she had a good pushback with Luthen. Both everybody else in her life, it's a, what do I do? Like, what do I do now that he's gone? And the invitation of her into the rebellion. Again, it's not like we see her character again because she was invented for the show.
But you don't know where they're going to take them next, because we do have a lot of them survive. That's the interesting part here. Dedra survives in some form or another. I don't think she's going to join the rebellion. I don't think she's going to get back in the Empire. But it'll be interesting to see if she kind of did she kind of get out of there eventually when the Empire fell? What did that look like? Was she around during the New Republic? You know, that's a potential. That's a potential plot point.
Her being part of the Secret Empire rebuilding project.
Exactly. You never know what could happen there. Yeah. So could she show up in something like The Mandalorian down the line or something like that? Could that happen? Who knows? Probably not, but it's a potential. Claire is still around. You have Wilman still around. Bix. I think Bix is going to be left alone, but Bix has Cassian's son, which is a very interesting plot point. Can I just talk about that for a second? The fact that I don't think it's a bad ending. I think it's actually it adds more to Rogue One in the sense that he just does not know about this son that's out there. What I find fascinating is they've done it in the same month that they released Tales of the Underworld, and Cad Bane had a secret son in that as well. Like, there's two secret sons. There's two secret sons of two characters that we've known for years running around. Like,
right. That's one of those
but it's different versions of it.
Yes, but they have to do like a Red Dead. I would say it'd be a Red Dead 2, but no, we know that where Cad Bane dies.
Yeah.
Because we see it in the Book of Boba Fett. So it's a spoiler alert for the Book of Boba Fett.
Sorry, well, it's been a while. It's been about like 4 years.
If you haven't watched it, hasn't it, you probably weren't going to watch it at this point.
And it's not that great. Like, it's probably one of the least Star Wars projects. It's not bad. Like, it's not like bad, but like, it's not great.
I disagree. Rewatching it, I consistently enjoy it. It feels like a level of like they try to bring The Godfather into Star Wars, which I appreciate because in full honesty, and I know this is controversial, The Godfather is not a fantastic film. But when you combine what is good about it with Star Wars, I think that makes it for a really good show. I just don't think like the fandoms mix there very often. And so having that difference between what is honorable, what is not, I think really fits for the Boba character and specifically, especially in his older age. Like I could go on and on about like Boba Fett, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
But
yes, I also thought.
Sorry.
Oh, I also thought with the Sun piece, it is yet another reflection, yet another repeating of the Force in the fact that we always see the son separated from the father. I think
it's a very big part of Star Wars, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just
a trope. Yeah, it's a big trope of like, I think just family in general. I think family being separated and the tragedy of that is quite a big part of Star Wars in general, right? It's if you look at we just said about Cad Bane, but if you look at you look at Bad Batch, you look at Ezra. Right, Ezra's removed from his parents. Kanan, in a way, removed from his mentor in Depa Billaba. All these characters are kind of removed from their by way of the Empire, and that's kind of the whole point of what the Nemec speech is at the end of kind of they bring it back at the end of the last episode, which I thought was really poignant. And they talk, and Partagaz is listening to it, but he says about how it's spreading, and I think it's this idea that actually, yes, the Empire is unnatural, and it does force all of these unnatural occurrences where there's people on their own, people trying to fight against each other, all this type of stuff. So I think what I will say though, and I think you are right about the Force in some sense, and I really like the inclusion of the Force healer in that one episode. I think that was a really cool way of using the Force without making it kind of like Jedi necessarily. But what I did find is, and I know this is silly, but at the end when Bix is holding their son and she's looking out and the son starts crying, and I just had this moment of like, is that kind of the son somehow being tuned in to what's going on? I know that sounds a little bit too much, but like
feeling his father die.
Yeah, and not necessarily that he's force sensitive, but I almost wonder if children, you know how like they say that children have more wonder regards like they can imagine things like in the real world they're more carefree and stuff like that. I wonder if the force kind of works similarly with children, and we do kind of have an example of that to a degree with the Chiss, because Chiss young Chiss girls, they have force sensitivity, and they become Skywalkers, which are essentially they will navigate the ships through the area of space, and this is canon. So I'm wondering if like maybe that's not just a Chiss thing necessarily, but that to a degree there's an essence of like a kind of instinctive force sensitivity in children, not actual force sensitivity, but like an instinctive understanding of what's going on, like an animal would, if you know what I mean. Like an animal would be intuit its environment.
They connect it with, especially whenever they're considering training Sabine in the Force.
Yeah.
It's one of those pieces where Kanan even comments, she is so stubborn as a Mandalorian. I think that is the exact reason why children are more tuned into the Force.
Yeah.
And I know that's not everybody's favorite, but the last scene from The Last Jedi, of the kid pulling in the broom.
Yes.
I wonder how much of that is like belief rather than actual talent, because yes, we talk about like force sensitivity and finding children, because you have, and this is where I have an issue with the Jedi kidnapping children, that's its own thing. But children are going to be more connected with the force because they are most connected with the world when they are young. When we grow up, like we've talked about, Ahsoka mentioned it when he was talking about Grogu, of how over time the ability will fade so long as he doesn't use it. So that even in itself is a commentary on everybody's connected through the Force.
Yeah.
And because children have been connected and built through the Force in its own way, that it's going to continue that connection until it eventually fades. So that's one of those pieces where anyone can be force sensitive. It's just that not everybody lives a life that allows you to master it. Because the Force in itself, whether George Lucas intended or not, has started to be more representative of inner peace or inner turmoil.
There's a bit of both, isn't there? Yeah, there's the scientific part that's definitely true. I think to a degree there is a part where people are born with force sensitivity or not. But I think a lot of that then kind of like how far that kind of goes is based on kind of what you do with it, right? You know?
Yeah, because Anakin could have just continuously lived on Tatooine and become whatever he was going to be, and never would have become a Vader. But that's a what if, and goodness knows I would love a Star Wars what if.
That would be very interesting, yeah. I mean, how does Palpatine even go about the rest of his plans at that point? Like, does he still get what he wants, or does it get what he wants, but it's more fractured? Does he get half of the galaxy, for example, and he's fighting a war? You know. Anyway, we're going way off track here. Andor, back to Andor. Yeah, I one thing I will say, and it was it bugged me throughout the whole season. And it's a small thing, but it really did bug me. Did it bug you when they kept saying, I'll meet you in, and then planet name? I'll meet you in Yavin. I'll meet you in Coruscant. It was annoying me so much.
I don't know whether it's just the way that I consume media. I did not even notice whenever it was I'll meet you at versus in versus on, which is ironic because when I'm speaking with somebody, I try and intentionally tell when are you saying in, at, on, or think, feel, believe, like those kind of things. But that is interesting. I never noticed.
They say it for everything. In Yavin, I was meant to be in Scarif. And I get it in a sense, because I suppose they're talking about it as if, I wonder if maybe Tony Gilroy is trying to imply, or like whoever's writing the episodes, that they're in the planet as if it's like to approximate it to a city.
Oh, wait a minute, wait. What if they're talking about the system?
Oh,
because you know how they'll talk about like the Bespin system. Technically,
Bespin is in the Bespin. Yeah, you would say it like that. Potentially, okay, maybe. I could see that,
because if they keep putting system in front of it, that's where I could see that bogging down the script.
Yes, maybe that's what they've done. Maybe that's what they've done.
It minimizes the potential exposure of different bases. Because even Coruscant system, like the core system, nobody really they talk about going to Coruscant in specific areas, but rarely. I don't think it was that many inns. But then again, you could also say, well, you go deeper into the planet, so you could say in as in like you go depth of the planet.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I don't hate it. I think your explanation will make me be able to manage it a bit better going a little bit going in future. But it was just like, it's on. Yeah. It's on Scarif. It's on Coruscant. It's on. That was like my one big thing with like a dialogue this season was so good. Like, the way that they included the Tarkin massacre regards Gorman, the way that they included, every little part. I was like, I did think that I could have done with a reference to Geonosis as part of the Death Star project as well. But I get why they didn't, because a lot of that was in the books and then a few Rebels episodes. But like, that was part of it too. Like,
that was part of it too. Whenever you talk about like the combination of like how close Saw has been to this project the entire time, it was fascinating that they didn't include him more in the season.
Yeah,
like I don't like Saw as a person. I love him as a character.
Yes,
like I need to differentiate between those.
Yeah, I think it is important to say. Yeah.
He's a fascinating character. He's a good representation of you have become everything you hope to destroy. Like his whole arc across both, well, even when they were introduced in in Clone Wars and then Rebels and then Rogue One, because they built that up. That it's so fascinating how many projects were going at the same time.
Yeah, he was very much the connective piece. He was like, I always use this as the example because I think it's the very easy example to do. He was like, Claire Temple in the Daredevil, the Netflix shows, in the Marvel Netflix shows. He was like that, right? He was like, he's in Clone Wars, he's in Rebels, he's in the Jedi. Well, it was just in the first one, but he was in Fallen Order. He was in he's in Rogue One. If Saw Gerrera doesn't show up during the Rebel period, basically you're not making a Rebel project.
Right. Well, I think that's so very interesting because he was planned from his first introduction in Clone Wars. Because again, they were working on Rogue One and they modeled him after Forrest Whitaker. So it's one of those fascinating things to see his transformation from this plucky young rebel with an actual direction into the loss of his sister and then into the slow descent into madness. But it wasn't slow, really. It was pretty quick after the Empire started forming.
I think I think he's a very interesting character, and you are right. I think, and also again, this is where I think some of that extra bit of time within the third season could have been good. Is that Willman's with him, and then they do all that stuff, and then just Willman's suddenly on Yavin. And it's like, I get what's happened. I get like that Cassian did the same thing as well regards Luthen. But the Luthen Cassian one is a little bit easier to swallow. I feel like, earlier in those episodes with Willman, Saul was like, basically, we're going to kill him. He's seen too much. And then suddenly he's on Yavin. Like, I feel like I could have done with a little bit more there.
Yeah. That's one of those pieces where, like, for a second, I thought that Willman and another character were two different characters because I was like, okay, he's on Yavin now, but surely he'd be still with Saw. And then when did he leave Yavin to go to Saw to be here? Because he's clearly debilitated, and there's a difference in his debilitation from the last time that you see him in the series versus when he's on the rings. So I think that's another interesting piece where it's like, okay, I understand that this might be debilitating, and it's clear that he still has the Saw gas mask that he's breathing in. Oh, what's it called? Not the Tabana. I know that's
Rhydonium, wasn't it?
Yes, Rhydonium. He's breathing in that Rhydonium, and I think that's an interesting thing. But also, fun little idea. Do you remember Gregor?
Yeah.
Because you know how he was blown up, quote unquote, by a Rhydonium explosion. That kind of explains why he's a little bit sillier in Rebels.
Yeah. I like that they're kind of doing this thing of like, this stuff does send you crazy if you're not careful with it.
Exactly. It's just like fucking lead poisoning and gasoline.
It was. I think it was a good inclusion for Saw to kind of imply how he's getting a little bit more.
Insane.
Well, what's the word? More, because he gets really like when Bodhi shows up to him in the actual Rogue One movie, he's really uncertain. He doesn't trust anything, and I think Saw before, yes, he was untrusting in ways, but I don't think he was paranoid. And I think it was good to show how he could get to that paranoia state.
You know, I think on top of that, Rebels also helped with that
Yes.
because whenever he first discovered the Kyber crystal, when he kidnapped Ezra and Sabine, when they found that giant Kyber
Yes.
crystal,
Yeah.
I think that also reinforced that, like, oh, my friends and I, because he considered them friends, but they're children.
Hmm.
He considered them on the same side of like, no, we want the same things. But when they said, no, we really don't, you're going to hurt people, he's just like, oh, so
Yeah.
it's betrayal then. Like that, I think is the first like domino you start to see fall. Because otherwise, you see it in the people that surround him. Everyone is so hardcore dedicated to his cause
Hmm.
that nobody questions him.
Yeah.
Nobody says, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, this was something that we heard about." Like nobody
Yeah.
speaks a word other than tubes and saw. That is
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So, one thing I want to talk about to you about as well, because I want to see what you think about it.
Yeah.
The Bail Organa,
Oh, love him.
the recast as it was Benjamin Bratt who played him in this, I believe.
Yeah.
Now, I really didn't like the idea when I'd first seen it. I'd first
Mhm.
heard about it. And then I watched it, and it was exactly the same thing I had with Alden Ehrenreich playing Han Solo. And after the
Mhm.
first 10 minutes, you believe it, like you so
Yeah.
believe it. Like
Oh
he
yeah.
he actually did a very good job of just really fitting into that skin. And don't get me wrong, I think everyone, and this is no slight on Benjamin Bratt, but I think everyone would
Mhm.
prefer Jimmy Smits if they could, right? Of
Yeah.
course, because he's
Absolutely.
the main, he's the guy who's
Oh,
played it.
he's been there for
But
years.
but
Yeah.
but like as like a good second best because Jimmy Smits wasn't available.
Mhm.
Very, very well done. Like
Oh,
very well
fantastic.
done.
So
Like
well done to the fact that we have never seen this side of Bale before. And I
yes.
think that is important to round out his character because he can't just be this sympathetic, always good. Like there's a little bit
Hmm.
of like, no, I'm here to fight for what's right, and what I believe is right is
Yeah.
this. And I
I
think that is better represented through
yes.
Benjamin Bratt. Like I've seen him on
Yeah.
Law and Order, so like
Uh,
I'm like, yes, I believe you are the cop that's fighting for what you think is right, but you're doing it a little bit
hmm.
inconsiderately. Like I think that's a perfect blend for this
Yeah,
cast.
I think what a lot of people have said was I think you're right in terms of Jimmy Smits kind of has done very well the caring kind of considered side of Bale. I think it was very interesting to see a side of Bale that was more in line with Leia's kind of fieriness, right?
Hmm.
And I
Absolute.
think
Oh,
I actually did kind of agree with that when I was watching it. Like that is a lot more how Leia would act in certain scenarios here.
mhm.
Like when he, and don't get me wrong, I don't love the real world cursing in Star Wars, but when he says to Monte, this place to shit or whatever, it was like, oh, right, okay, like I see what this is, like
Yeah.
so, suddenly those scruffy looking Nerf hurdle lines make a lot more sense from Leia. They make a lot more
Hmm.
sense. So,
Oh yeah, because he mutters that under his breath or to very specific people. Because
yeah,
otherwise, it's the hi, hello, how are
yeah.
like it gave him depth, and
It
I
did.
love that.
It did. And I think that's the thing with both Mon and Bill. They've always been background characters to Padme, right? They've always
Yeah.
been Padme's kind of seconds in a
Yes.
way. If you think about even in the Clone Wars, right? It's like
Mhm.
Padme is doing an episode. Oh, let's attach Bail onto it, or let's put Mon Mothma in. You know, they've always felt like secondary, even to Leia in a way, right? They're secondary characters of those kind of characters, but in this show,
Right.
they are primary characters. They are. I
Yes.
mean, Mon Mothma. To me, if you were to say who is this show's protagonist, if not Cassian, Mon,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
Bail Organa's there as kind of like really supportive of her character in these, especially in those last few episodes. Um,
Yeah.
and kind of seeing a little bit more of that kind of conflict between them as well, because they've always been sort of on the
Hmm.
same page. And seeing in those
Yes.
last few episodes where they have a little bit more of a like a not conflict on like on a grand scale, but kind of like there's a
Yeah.
little bit of a difference of ideology even between them, you know?
Yeah. I think it's one of those interesting things, and Rebels really, really did it well
Hmm.
of emphasizing how one rebellion is never going to be one rebellion. It has to have not just conflict, but also there's going to be so many different coming togethers of people that you are bound to get different ideas. That's why you have factions like Saws. It's why
Yes.
you have General Dodonna who believes one thing, and that's why you have Mon Mothma who believes that no, we can negotiate, we can fight on their terms, and even Saul
Hmm.
pushing back of like, no, you really can't. We can't fight on their terms.
Hmm.
We do not have the military strength we do not have the reach. We need people. And I think that those conflicting ideas bring out the real of the rebellion.
Yeah.
In that we need people. We need hope. We need to build confidence in us. And the Andor arc, going back to the Clone Wars and Saw, really builds what makes a successful rebellion. It's belief, it's hope.
Yeah, I mean, the Gorman episodes did that very well within this show as well. The idea that, and I think that was actually, a very shocking death compared to the sort of most pointless death of the season with Cinta dying because of the rogue blaster bolt, right? And kind of from a fight that didn't need to even happen, right?
Right.
But I think that's the point, right? It's that rebellion can sometimes be so disorganized that it is senseless, and not to say that that's a bad thing, not to say that you shouldn't rebel because of that, but it's to say some people will lose their lives for very, very silly things because of this. This is not an easy fight, so to speak. And I thought it was very interesting to see on screen. I think I get a lot of people were frustrated with that because it's our first real same-sex kind of couple on screen, right? We've had some in books and stuff, and that's great, but on screen,
implied,
implied, or in a brief section that was cut from the movie in other regions. We're looking at you, Rise of Skywalker, but yeah, I kind of get that, but also I think the way they handle that scene afterwards with Vel talking to that guy and saying, like, don't you dare cry and stuff, I thought that was very powerful in its own way as well. And saying she was better than you and stuff like that. It was like, oh, okay, right. I get that it was kind of not great for Star Wars kind of to kill off the, fridge the same-sex couple. That wasn't the best idea in the world. But I get why it was a poignant moment, and I get why they had to kind of do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I'm wondering if the term fridging here in this case is really warranted, because I do think that Cinta had her own character arc, and she did have like that closure piece. And like as soon as they started making up, I was like, oh, she's gonna die. Like I knew from that moment
I suppose
she was gonna get killed either by a rogue Imperial shot, or it's gonna be someone doing something incredibly stupid like dropping a grenade or some kind, and she dives in to save it. I would have liked it to be a little bit more heroic rather than senseless, but I do think that, especially like you said with the speech after, it settles in for people. Rebellion means death.
Yeah,
a rebellion means you are going to kill people. If you are not prepared for that, then you need to step out. Like, that is not something. It is too late. You are in this. This is what you signed up for. And her speech leading up to that, because she was talking specifically to him, saying, "I know you are going to.
Do not do this." Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it compares into, because I know we live in a society where, especially the people making this film, we do.
Sorry,
the people making this
yeah,
are also referencing a bit of Christianity, in that Judas betraying Jesus. Like I think there's that level where she's talking directly to Judas, saying,
it was kind of like the Last Supper type thing, wasn't it? You did kind of get that vibe, a little bit,
Beautiful. Oh, also fun. I think I sent you the meme of it. The actor that plays the leader, the father of the French resistance, the Gorman resistance, played a Nazi in Inglourious Basterds, which I found hilariously.
It's fascinating to like see someone play both sides of a similar coin, isn't it? What I will say is, I think this season has done a lot for pointless deaths, though, or maybe not pointless deaths, but in like not particularly like heroic deaths, so to speak. If you look at them, Cyril, he dies in obscurity. He
dies because of obsession. And he leaves people behind. And he did die pointlessly in the fact that he caused his own death. He could have gotten out of there. He could have lived a full life. He had that opportunity. Now, mind you, I don't want a Nazi to live a happy life.
No, but
in any way, shape, or
regards that character, he could have definitely turned. I think if he hadn't seen Andor, I think you could have seen him helping the Gormans. I think you could have definitely seen him change his stance. And not that means he should get necessarily a redemption, but there have been other characters who have done similar things. Look at Callus, for example, in Rebels. So very similar paths for a lot of these guys who are seeing the kind of movement towards the Death Star, and they say, "Ooh, maybe this is a bit far now." But I mean, across the season, you have Brasso died very unceremoniously. So did Cyril. So did Luthen. I mean, Luthen's was. I mean, the ending with Claire was a little bit more ceremonious, I guess. It was a little bit more poignant, so to speak. But his stabbing himself with that Nautilum bleeder was very like you didn't even see it. You know what I mean? It was like he turned away and like bam. And then the last one that I'm Partagaz as well. That one was a little bit more solemn though, and I think that was quite an interesting one. The amount of like non-dialogue that happened there that you could just like when Legret leaves the room, tells the stormtroopers to stay where they are, and how, like and he knows that Partagaz is going to kill himself. I think it was quite interesting in a lot of ways there. But yeah.
Well, it really forces that structure that so for fascism, it does require complete obedience to whatever is set. There is no question. There is just this. This is the rule. And going back to the Cyril piece, I do think that his death, one, was necessary. And it don't get me wrong, it was not impactful to either faction, but it does show the idea of like obsession will get you killed in a war. That is something that you cannot afford. On top of that, even in his interaction with Daedra before, with Daedra before, where he clearly shook her for the first time in this series that she has been shook, because otherwise, much like she's his parallel.
Yes,
she is so obsessed about finding
Axis. Yes.
And then and she could have learned. She could have learned from Cyril that this obsession just leads to death. And I did like, spoiler for the ending of it. I mean, we've already talked about a lot of things. At the end, her ending up in the prison like Andor was.
Yes.
Fucking perfect, because
it was a good ending.
Every single aspect of fascism says, as long as I'm a good fascist, I will not end up like anybody else that we oppress. No, you are going to end up.
They'll turn on you eventually. Yeah.
Correct. Because one failure and you're out. That is how it goes.
I think what people found interesting with her as well is she's this high-ranking Imperial, right? Relatively speaking, not super high, but she's in the ISB. That's
top ISB.
That's a mover and shaker, right? And she has someone who is fundamentally below her, Cyril, not just in terms of the job he had before, but in the fact that he eventually does end up working for her, right? Essentially. And then the other side of that, you have Ben Mendelsohn's Krennic, and he is coming in, and they both belittle her in different ways, and actually they essentially abuse her in certain ways. Nothing obviously, well, it is untoward, but nothing extremely bad. But like still, they're committing acts of violence against her at certain points in this. And I think that's interesting. We haven't really had. I think this season as well, there's obviously earlier on the season, there's the regards the sexual assault of Bix as well.
Yeah.
And I think seeing that side of Star Wars in another way, the way that power is wielded against. And I don't think that needs to be a big theme of Star Wars overall, because I don't think that's something that needs to come up in Star Wars all too often. But I think seeing how the power dynamics between different like men and women in this show specifically was interesting. Because you have a lot of people who, like you just said there, Cyril and Daedra were kind of parallels. You know, you had Hirt and you had Legret and you had Lonnie Young. You had those supervisors that you saw a lot of as well. They didn't get treated the same way. I think it was necessary to separate Daedra in that way and show what was happening to her. And I think it was interesting to have Bix, someone who is trying to rebel, but still has these troubles that kind of come her way, right? From other angles. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was going to say, because with regards to that piece of how Star Wars has never really differentiated between what are men and what are women, beyond what was previously held by the patriarchy as like women are lesser implicitly. This one made it explicit, and it really emphasized, hey, this is how, especially whenever it comes to people in power, will abuse people below them because they believe that they can get away with it. And that kind of representation, especially with I'm sure I'm not going to mention his name because that brings a whole firestorm along with it. But the fact that like, oh, Vader wouldn't have stood for that.
Yes.
The fuck he wouldn't. He is a fucking genocidal.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I think in a sense, he's right about that. I think there's certain instances where I think if Vader saw something going in that specific vein, because of his still sore subject regards his mother and Padme, might stop something like that. Still, Vader is, like you've just said, genocidal maniac who is killing people on the regular for very small things. And I think there would be no rhyme or reason to it, but I do think he would maybe stop something like that. But that does not mean that the Empire is not doing that. Vader is not the Empire. Vader is not everywhere in the Empire. And the Empire and Palpatine would let it happen because Palpatine would not care. I mean, Palpatine didn't even care about his own clone son. Like,
right. Well, and I think there is that aspect of where the devaluation of human life and also just in general, like being reduced to whatever you are useful for is so prescient in this. So it is so up front and center that none of us matter. I mean, hell, that's Luthen's whole speech is none of us matter. Literally, the only thing that matters is that we stop this and that we build towards. He even mentions like, I'm going to build towards a future I will never see.
Yeah.
Which, fair. Yeah, that is how every single bit of history works, is we make things better for things we will never enjoy.
Yeah. That last line, even when they're in the, and I thought that was a very interesting piece of storytelling when they're both pretending that they don't know who each other is in Luthen's shop at the end, and she's like asking him about this artifact, and he's going like, he goes, the rebellion's flown away, it's not here anymore, and I love that he thought, right, actually, the rebellion is far bigger than me now. Anyway, I can bow out. I don't need to hold these pretenses anymore.
I think Andor's comment on that the rebellion would not exist if not for Luthen.
Yes,
I 1000% agree. Don't get me wrong; it would have started eventually, but I think Luthen pushed it to the point where it grew big enough to fight the Empire.
There was a lot of those. I mean, just let alone of everything else, just the Mon Mothma piece, right? If Mon Mothma hadn't got out, then there wouldn't have been the rest.
She would have just been there.
Yeah.
And she would have been conflicted about it. She probably would have, she could have gone any number of ways. She could have become like her mother and started drinking away all of her problems or numbing it in some other way or fashion. Because in a fascist society, the Senate does not matter. It is literally just a way to say, no, we still have representation, but the representation is controlled by me, the central power. Like that is, it's the illusion of choice, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole other.
Definitely. But I think what we've learned from this is you could talk about Andor season 2, especially season 2. I think season 2 was a lot more poignant than season 1, even though season 1 was good in its own way. I think you could talk about it for hours, right? I think you could talk about it for hours and hours. But we've already spent about 40 minutes discussing it, and we do have a few other topics to discuss. So Superman. Superman's coming out later this year, obviously a few months now. And they dropped like the big full trailer. I think it was this week. Was it this week or last week? Either way.
This week.
And as usual, there's the usual kind of Snyder fans denouncing it. And there's a lot of people also excited for it. Tater, what do you think? Are you a big Superman fan? I don't know where you stand on this one.
So Superman in general has never been my favorite. He always felt too one-dimensional for me.
Yes,
but I do appreciate him in art. Like I think that even with the Snyder versus commentary on like, oh well, he's a menace. It's like, yeah, kind of in the way that Spider-Man's kind of a menace, and the fact that at least Peter Parker has depth that we see.
Yes,
but Superman, I feel like we never really get into who is he? What is he really dealing with beyond mommy and daddy issues? Like, okay, you lost your planet, boo-hoo.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean, because it doesn't really go into that. Yeah. What I actually have heard, though, because I think my thing, and I do kind of get where people are coming from with this, but we always have to kind of hark back to the fact that James Gunn did the Guardians and brought the Guardians from obscurity, right? We have to talk. I think we have to kind of applaud that, right? The Guardians of the Galaxy are one of the biggest kind of names Marvel-wise and superhero-wise now, compared to before that movie came out, no one knew who they were, right? I think that's important to say. But with this, people are saying that the opposite. So yeah, you've got a big main character in Superman, but the villains, I mean, Lex Luthor is in it, but the other villains that they've got in this movie are essentially no ones, right? And what someone's actually said, and I think this is quite interesting, Supergirl is meant to apparently show up in the movie at some point.
Is it Crypto as well? Or am I thinking of something else?
Crypto's in the movie as well, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought he was in the trailer.
And what I find interesting is that some people are saying, I think this is, I forget the name of the actual character, but there's this like almost like mech thing that is meant to copy the powers of Superman. It's there in the trailer.
Oh.
I forget, but basically people are saying it's like this big domed head thing, and it looks almost like Juggernaut but flies. But like
I might not know that because I was thinking a little bit of like, I know that's not Cerebro, probably. Definitely not the toy maker. Oh, who's the guy with the?
I think it's called like something like the helmet of Baravia or something. I think it's. I'm trying to look it up because Hammer of Baravia. It's called, and Hammer of Baravia is a mechanized terrorist representing Baravia and a formidable enemy of Superman. But I think, from what I gathered, what people were saying is that it's a new character. I don't know if it's actually showed up in comics before. Either way, basically, a lot of people are saying that this is he has powers not dissimilar from Superman, right? There's like has the beams, etc. And people are actually theorizing. I think this could be very interesting as a concept that Supergirl crashed to Earth before Superman, as is typical as an idea, but she is. Sorry, fell to Earth after Superman, should I say? Which is the typical idea, even though she goes before Superman in the actual. But that she has been captured by Lex Luthor and has been put inside the suit. Now, if this is true, I mean, it was all a theory online, but if that's true, that could be a very cool twist to the end of the movie, where you actually have these two Kryptonians at the end of the movie who are fighting over essentially nothing. And I think it could kind of get into what you're talking about, right? That this about their planet, and these two people who are essentially the last people of their planet being made to fight, right? I think that could be.
I would wonder if they're going the Power Girl route.
Well, that's another interesting thing as well, isn't it? Because they've obviously got the Supergirl movie coming out down the line, but are they going to go into multiversal stuff yet? Because obviously Power Girl is Supergirl from Earth 2, I believe. So are they going to go down that route? Or are they going to leave that? And where does that go eventually? Is it a different actor and all that type of stuff? But I am actually excited for Superman. I will say, obviously, I'll talk about it a bit more. But I'm not a big DC person, so I can talk about it a little bit, but I can't talk about it to like an extreme amount. Just because
also my knowledge is limited based on the Justice League, the animated series, like Young Justice. I even played I read the Injustice comics, but then I played the Injustice games, and like it's one of those interesting things where you get alternative realities, and like okay, you have more depth to him, but he's still just genocidal maniac or poster boy.
Yes.
And I get it. He's super powerful, and like his whole thing is, I must restrain myself, and I have to be disinteresting. I'm just a common man. Like I get that. That's kind of his. He was made in the 30s. I can't expect much of him.
He's Captain America, but at least Cap has less powers to where you can kind of have him struggle a bit. I get it. I get exactly what you're saying. I think that's a common complaint of Superman in general. But I feel like potentially, because as well they're introducing like Green Lantern in this with Guy Gardner, they're adding like Hawk Girl into this as well. I think you could have a little bit more of like you've got a little bit more of like a political issue going on as well. Not political in like the actual political term, but like jurisdiction, let's say. Like, oh, are you allowed to fight this thing? Because like we're the Justice League and stuff like that. So like, I think it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Mr. Terrific is also in the movie. So there's a lot of superhero stuff in this movie that is still separate to Superman, and so I'm interested to see how those all play out. But yeah, I can't say much on this one myself. I think it's a matter of waiting until it actually kind of comes out and then talking about it then.
I do hope that they're, especially since it's going to be directed by James Gunn, and James Gunn is pretty in tuned with like relative meme culture, that they do put like the song Starman into the movie. I was gonna say, I'm glad you get the reference. Any poster of Superman, there's a Starman. And I was like, that's good.
But also, I don't want too much James Gunnisms. I talk about this a lot. I like James Gunn, but I think he does too many of his similar little tropes across his movies with like, oh, the soundtrack's got to be all these retro songs, and we've got to have these kind of quippy characters, and like and like also like he seems to like his kind of ragtag groups. And I know that this is a single individual movie, so it won't necessarily go that deep deep into that. But I just hope it's not, oh, look, a fun ragtag group again, because he's done Suicide Squad, he's done Creature Commandos, he's done Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, dude, let's just, let's change it up a little, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I like what he does, but I you know, it's like Dave Filoni for Star Wars for me. Like, I like Dave Filoni. I think he makes good stuff, but I also think sometimes he does really bad things. Like, stop. You know?
I was gonna say, I feel like that's a whole other podcast episode we could get into.
Oh, yeah. All I'll say is, I and this is just a top and bottom quick thing to say. I think Dave Filoni makes really good things. Rebels was really good. Clone Wars, of course, really good. I think Ahsoka I did enjoy, despite a lot of people didn't love it. But
right.
I will say I do not like his flagrant disregard for canon a lot of the time.
Gotta be really interesting. We'll have to talk more about that.
We'll have to talk about that.
That's gonna be, yeah, we'll have to talk about that in another episode.
Yeah,
because we still got the Ironheart preview.
We have Ironheart. Yes. So, what did you think about that?
You know what? Interestingly enough, up until it was on this list, I had no idea what was happening. This is the interesting thing, and I both love and hate Disney for this.
Mm-hmm.
If it does not think a project is going to succeed, it will not promote it, to the point where so many of the projects that it has not advertised have been some of my fucking favorite. Sorry for
no, it's absolutely fine. It's fine.
That, especially, like, it always goes back to the original one that I was like, okay, this was the thing that I loved as a kid, but I only got it out of pure luck. Otherwise, I probably never would have seen it. And that's Treasure Planet.
Right. Okay.
Disney did not advertise that whatsoever. But it was still a fantastically done movie. But they were trying to move away from 2D, and so they wanted to do something else. And I'm like, I'm sure with Ironheart, there's going to be a lot of nanotech, which again, Marvel has big fan of anymore. But also, it's easy. It makes it cheaper. Like, trust me, this is something where we don't have the same level of investment into Marvel movies, in my opinion, that we used to, because there is a fatigue of this. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the MCU.
Yeah,
I do. But after a while, I start to see why trilogies or like movie franchises don't last forever. Like, it's fine. You can make new things.
Yeah, I where am I with it? I think, for me personally, I think this is a very hard one, because Daredevil has just come out. Daredevil was very good. People really enjoyed Daredevil, and I think to have a show that clearly Disney does not have a lot of support for, to see a show that also on top of that is dealing with a character that shouldn't be controversial but is controversial, and we could go through all the reasons for that, and it's very clear. You don't have to say them.
Marvel fanboys are I was gonna say Marvel fanboys are racist and sexist. There we go.
That's the top and bottom of it. But it shouldn't be controversial, but it is. Apparently. And so what you essentially have is a perfect storm for this show to fail. And that's a horrible thing to say, but it is, especially because they're dropping the show in 3 episodes, and I believe another 3 episodes, and that's it. So it's going to be like 2 weeks.
Right.
Which they did with Echo as well, when they weren't sure about Echo. And I actually really enjoyed Echo. I really enjoyed that show.
Man, yeah. It's one of those pieces where it's like, I get you not wanting to invest into what you're going to see is unpopular, but if you don't, it's not going to go well. Like, I think this is that piece where Marvel really, especially in TV, can really, really succeed. Like, I preach and preach and preach. I'm so glad that they redid Daredevil.
Yeah.
Because the Marvel TV shows were some of the best TV at that time.
Yes.
And continued to be. Like, don't get me wrong, I know that people had issues with Iron Fist. I actually kind of enjoyed it.
I did in a way. Yeah.
Series, but it was still really good. Like, even Luke Cage, I was invested into
Luke Cage was really good. I really enjoyed, like, the villains in that. Like, the way you saw Mariah kind of build herself up from, like, she's a political figure into basically, in the second season, she's burning someone alive in a cafe. Like, what?
Right, she's like a reverse Kingpin.
Like, what? Like, I desperately wanted more of that. I thought she was a great character.
Yeah. But again, this is that piece where, like, Marvel can invest into its TV. But like you said, I think that they've invested a lot into, especially now that they're owned by Disney. Disney's investing so heavy into Andor right now that they probably pulled back a lot for Ironheart, because they're like, we'd rather this one that's probably going to succeed rather than take a chance on. And again, that's my whole issue with Disney right now as a company. You got to take risks. You got to invest into smaller things that can be popular. Like that's something that
I mean, we're seeing that in the gaming space right now, and I don't typically talk about gaming too much here, but look at Claire Obscure, right? This game that's kind of come out of nowhere. Not actually out of nowhere. It was, promoted. It has been on people's radar, but it was a game that was developed by 33 people from studios prior who basically put their heart into it and made a game that's now Game of the Year contender, right? It's the same with shows, right? Shows can be the same. If people put effort into something, like you said with Andor there, Andor was something that people really said, who wants this? And then now that it's out, people are like, best Star Wars maybe ever. So there is those potentials to make something great if people want to make something great. And I think you're right. Some of this has become kind of sloppy. And I'm a big Marvel fan. I still want to see the next MCU project. I usually go opening night or day thereafter. I like Marvel. I will still go and support Marvel, watch Marvel. But you are right in that they are getting to the point now where it feels more like they're just kind of like they're trying their hardest to just kind of anything to stick. And like, I think Ironheart should stick. I think it's an interesting premise. The issue is that they're not really giving anything to it. People keep going. Where is the promotion for this? It's non-existent. It's non-existent. Look at Agatha Harkness, for example. Agatha came out the beginning. Was it beginning of this year or end of last? End of last, I think. Right?
Somewhere in there.
And fantastic show from start to finish, in my opinion. And why did they succeed? Because people didn't expect the world from it, and so when it came out, and actually it was quite good, you saw a lot of the hate for it dissipate. Because it's different, because it's a little bit more zany. I think the thing is with these franchises, unless if something has a big budget, it has to be kind of formulaic. If it doesn't have a big budget, it can try something new. And I think that's when people enjoy the new stuff, when it doesn't have that big budget,
Which I do worry this one's going to take itself too seriously because it is an Iron family kind of thing. Which is a shame because Iron Man was so fun and it was so light. But when we see Ironheart in Wakanda Forever, it's taken so seriously. And I know that's because the movie was...
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, you've just...
I disconnected and reconnected.
and all I heard was, wow.
Sorry about that. I did not read that.
Totally fine.
Yeah, but I do worry that, because again, fantastic show. I'm going to check it out because I have Disney Plus, and what else am I going to watch?
Yeah.
But it's one of those where I worry it's going to take itself too seriously. There's not going to be that balance of humor that Iron Man consistently did.
Yeah.
And I know it's not to compare the two characters because they're different people.
They are.
But I do think it's going to be interesting to see what they kind of do with her. Like, it's going to be good.
What I think would have been interesting now, and personally, I think before it didn't seem like a possibility, but knowing that Tony, I'm calling him Tony now, knowing that Robert Downey Jr. is coming back for Doomsday, I personally would have rewritten this a little bit and brought Robert Downey Jr. back on for this one as well, as a Tony AI, like in the comics. And I think that would have made this show a little bit more palatable to everyone. Not saying that should be a reason as to why to do it, because I don't want him necessarily stealing the show from Ironheart herself. But I think that's what the comic was. And I think a lot of people would take it a little bit more seriously if Robert Downey Jr. was in it. And then I think you could kind of see maybe a bit more of a progression of this. The issue is, as well, is we're getting so close to Doomsday now, and everyone keeps thinking that Doomsday is going to basically flip the script and change everything, right? And the multiverse is going to come to an end. You're probably going to have either the MCU finish altogether, which I don't think it's going to, but either it's going to end altogether or it's going to start afresh. It's going to be like a new universe, right? And if so, then all of these shows we're kind of watching now are maybe for nothing. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of worry, I think. I think people are kind of not really wanting to get invested right now because they don't know how this multiverse saga is going to end. Before, you knew that if you were going to get to Thanos, you knew that the next movie was going to come out. Now, not so much.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things where, especially after the loss of, Kang,
Yeah.
That whole thing, it really left the MCU kind of wanting, and that's the difficulty of investing. And don't get me wrong, Marvel started because they invested into an actor who was going to potentially fail.
Yes.
Robert Downey Jr. at that time was in recovery, wasn't
Yeah.
always going to be a guarantee, but he started this whole wonderful thing, and again, he deserves to have his credit done.
Yes.
I do wonder for Dominique Thorne, who is going to be playing
hmm
Riri.
hmm
I wonder how she's gonna play it, and I do wonder because they didn't necessarily take out the potential for an AI system. They may not have an AI system for her. I don't know. It's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see how is she going to have a
hmm
person in the chair? Is she going to have someone? Is she
It,
just going to have
that's my
talking to
concern
herself?
as well with this show. It feels very like they haven't really got a like there's not really a cast in this show. Like I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe it. Like Ironheart's very not. I'm sorry. You have to admit this at the same time. We can say what we want about. She is not a very popular character, in the fact that a lot of people don't know who she is. Miss Marvel, for example, very different scenario. A lot of people knew Miss Marvel, right? They knew her from games. They knew her from Marvel's Avengers. They knew her from. She was pushed pretty hard when she was coming out. Ironheart, not so much. So I think because there's not many characters surrounding her in the show. There's not like a mentor figure as regards, you look at She-Hulk. At least She-Hulk had Wong show up in the show. At least She-Hulk had Emil Blonsky from previous in the show. Again, not
Oh,
everything
and
needs to
Wong.
be, yeah. At least not everything needs to be connected to the previous stuff. I get that, but I think it's a bit awkward with this one because Agatha at least had the premise of WandaVision to continue on, right? And Agatha wasn't the most popular character in the world, but it had that. I feel like Ironheart essentially is going to allude to what Wakanda Forever did and then move on. And I don't know if it's going to feel enough connected or enough in line with the other Marvel stuff to really get that audience in the seat. And again, that's a shame because I think, we have a black woman lead in this show, and that's very good in itself, right? But
Yeah.
I don't think Ironheart as a character has the staying power, despite the fact that I want her to, if that makes sense.
I do think they'll keep her around, if not just for the what was it called, the Young Avengers. No, there's like, well, the way that they'll connect Kate Bishop and
Mm-hmm.
Kamala Khan, and that like they'll have a new Thunderbolts team-ish.
Yeah, you'd think
And
so.
they'll
Yeah.
hopefully connect them all together because again, fantastic characters, fantastic actors.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the show that I was watching that had actually Haley Williams as the voice? I cannot remember off the top of my head now. I think about it. Either way, not important, but fantastic. Just overall,
Mm-hmm.
could be a really great cast. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're just throwing her into
Mm-hmm.
there as an introduction, blah 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 blah. And I'm sure Marvel has their reasons for including, like, and not promoting. But I do hope that this isn't just their attempt to throw away the character just because she didn't do quite as well in Wakanda Forever.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought she did a fantastic job in that movie myself. I just know
I
that
actually really
Kim
enjoyed her
Nolan.
inclusion. It was kind of nice to see
Yeah,
um, a character be. It was nice to have a character be introduced through a movie again, because
yeah.
it was like how Black Panther initially showed up in Civil War, right? I think it's nice to have those characters kind of show up, kind of somewhat organically in other franchises first, and then kind of gain something from that. But
So you want to know the worst part about that? Or
what's that?
sorry, so like the introduction of a character. I would have used the Spider-Man comparison
Oh,
because
true.
aside from the
Yeah.
fact that we already knew who Spider-Man was, pretty much beat for beat, they find her that like, okay, our lead character, aka in this case Tony,
hmm
or in this case will be Shuri, goes to insert place here, whether it's Peter's home or her dorm room,
Yeah, that's
searching
true.
for a genius who can help her out. Like this is it's beat
It's
for
pretty.
beat.
Yeah, actually, now
Similar
that you
to
say it
Luke,
like that, yes, it is very much the same.
but because she is a woman of color,
hmm
the fanboys hate it.
hmm
But because it was a white boy that we already knew, the fanboys loved it. Like it's that hypocritical nature of like, oh, no, it's just not good character. No, it's okay. I
yeah.
don't like. I care that you're racist. Please stop. But like, if you can't even admit that, just get out. Just it's
Yeah.
fine. You don't. This isn't for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a weird one where no one wants anyone to do anything other than the people basically want. It's hard because like people want formulaic, right? Essentially, they want something that they can kind of nostalgia trips and cameos and all that type of stuff. That's what people want now. but they don't actually want that because then they'll say, "Oh, it's just the same." So like,
exactly.
you don't win. You don't win.
What they love is misery, and they love commiserating it. They love making money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that consistency of like,
It's
let's only
grifting.
talk negative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Right, because negative content is still content, and it typically brings more engagement.
Yeah, exactly. More, yeah, which is a shame, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of where I'm at with Ironheart. I'm interested to see what goes on with the show. I'm interested to see about the Hood. Obviously, the Hood is the villain of the show, and the idea of science and magic and seeing where that goes. Like science versus magic. There's been rumors that Mephisto is going to be in it as well. There's some deep fake AI stuff that showed up that I don't love. I don't think it's real, should I say? But it would be interesting if Mephisto showed up in this show. I think that would help it, if I'm being completely honest, to have a show that really kind of goes this kind of like, it just throws you entirely off course. You're thinking, oh, it's going to be this kind of like plucky adventure story, and then suddenly you're dealing with the literal, you know, devil.
Credit for like a lot of Spider-Man shows is Spider-Man's a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
You throw him into the mystic shit, he's out of whack. Like, it's funny. Mm-hmm. It's good. It's good to mix those two worlds.
I think that might happen with this. And then we're moving on to our last topic and this is a very big one. Kristen Ritter is returning to Daredevil as Jessica Jones. So Kristen Ritter has really loved the role of Jessica Jones since you played her, right? I think that's always been the case. Very, very similar to. I think that what's a shame is, and I do think. Don't get me wrong. I like Mike Coulter as Luke, and I didn't. Again, like you just said before, I didn't mind Finn Jones as Daredevil. Didn't love it. Not Daredevil. Sorry, Iron Fist. I didn't love it, but I understood, right? But I think Kristen Ritter was on the same level as Charlie Cox as Daredevil. I think Kristen Ritter really embodied Jessica Jones, really made that character.
Second show? I think that was the second show.
That was the second show. Yeah, she and he got 3 seasons. And then the other two only got the 2. But wow. Wow. Like, I loved every part of Jessica Jones. I thought every season had a really important story to tell, really interesting story to tell. So it's really good to see her back in this. I'm interested to see how she's going to fit in. I know obviously she's quite powerful as a character, but I'm wondering how she's going to fit into the actual arc of the show. Is she going to be like doing PI work with like BB Urich, or is she going to be kind of beating people down a bit more, or is she going to be? I actually made a comment a few years back. There was a video I made regards Daredevil when it was first kind of coming together, and the idea that Jessica Jones would come back, and like in the comic that this is kind of being based on, there's these children of Kilgrave. Now, I think that would be a bit on the nose to do, because like the implication is that a lot of these children are born of, well,
rape.
Which obviously I don't think we necessarily want to go down that route. But in that comic, the children of Kilgrave essentially mind wiped Kingpin so that he didn't remember who Daredevil was, and then he eventually finds out again. I'm wondering if they're going to kind of do the reverse of that, and then somehow this season Kingpin stops being able, doesn't know who Daredevil is again. For some reason, because he's starting to lose the need to hide that, you know. And I'm wondering how that'll go, you know. And so I'm wondering if there's maybe going to be something a little bit more, not mystical necessarily, but a little bit more, again, scientific-y, you know, more superhero-y, more kind of elevated version of that. Yeah. You know, you're bringing Jessica in, who's a little less, she's grounded still, but a little less, because her powers are a little bit more on that super scale. And Kingpin showing that too. I actually would really love to see a brawl between Jessica Jones and Kingpin. I think that could be kind of cool. But another thing that could be interesting as well is, I just thought of this whilst we were recording here now, if they do bring Finn Jones back, I'd be interested if they did kind of like a dual Daredevil again, in that, like, as like a kind of like throw someone off the scent type thing. Because in the comics, Danny Rand is Daredevil for a time. But what if they kind of co-opt that idea and make it into like sort of like they did with
Spartacus?
Kind of like that, but like what I was more implying the opposite, the kind of mirror version of what they did with Bullseye in season 3 of Daredevil, and kind of do like and Matt Murdock's at this thing, and then Daredevil goes past, and then like everyone's like, well, it can't possibly be him then. You know what I mean? Like, so like, I think you could see something with that as well. I also think if Jessica's back, Mike Coulter has to be back as Luke, in my opinion, because they're very close characters in the comics. So I think you might even see them now being further on and maybe even having their child, because obviously in the comics they have a child together. That could potentially be where you pick up with them. Who knows?
This is something where I'd have to refresh the end of Luke Cage for me, but didn't Luke Cage end up getting with Claire?
He did, but then at the end of season 2, you see him running the club, and Claire leaves. She looks up at him and sees that he's basically becoming like what Cottonmouth was, and leaves. Yeah. So potentially seeing where we pick up with those characters, you could see that have all changed, and Jessica and Luke kind of.
I would love to see Rosario Dawson in another thing, because again, I love her in every single thing she's been.
She's a very good actress, and I think it would be nice to see her back in some form. But whether it depends on who they're going to bring back and who they want to bring in as well, because I think you might see characters who haven't necessarily, you might see characters from the wider MCU come up again. I mean, look at Jack DeCane, obviously as Swordmaster in the show.
Oh, yeah.
And then are you going to see Kate Bishop show up as a result? Especially considering she has a past with Kingpin as well. And if so, will you see Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton? But will you? Because he's obviously not been happy about regards pay for Hawkeye season 2.
That's just that whole thing was just nutty to me. I'm like, Marvel, don't act like you have a budget now.
Yeah, especially when Hawkeye was one of the good ones, in my opinion. I thought season 1 was very good. And I think you could very much weave it into Daredevil now, right? You could easily do that in some way. A lot of people were saying they would love to see Bullseye and Hawkeye go up against each other as well. And again, another fight, another interaction I think could be very, very interesting. I think also you have to consider that Echo might show back up. Daredevil has been was in the Echo show, albeit briefly. Echo is obviously very big a big tie to Kingpin, so who knows who's going to show up. But again, going back to Kristen Ritter, very excited to see her back. Also, we have to think about this: if Kristen Ritter's back, does that mean that her sister's back on that what's her name, Trish?
Yeah, I know.
Is Trish back on the cards? And if so, she is superpowered as well and in the raft.
True.
Yeah. What does that imply? Where's that going? Because there's a lot of characters in the raft currently. You've got the leader there. You've got Ross there. You've got Trish potentially there now. Still, you've got I think Zemo is technically there. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh gosh, because Agent 33 is still running her secret organization.
That too, as well.
Yeah.
So who knows where that's going to go? But it's very exciting to see Kristen Ritter come back for season 2 and see where that's going to take her character and see if that takes us back to a new Jessica Jones show as well. Who knows? Please, that's the other thing. I would love to see that. I think that, or I think you could potentially go down the route of doing like a Heroes for Hire thing at this point and doing it as a separate, as a more of an ensemble thing, with like Luke, Jessica. We also have to think about is Misty and Colleen going to come back as well? Those are 2 big characters from the Netflix show. But if they bring all of them back, I think it's going to be too much. So it's a weird one. You know what I mean?
I think the interesting piece, especially for Daredevil season 2, is the whole point is to build an army.
Yes,
don't get me wrong.
True.
We won't be able to go into the nuances that they did in the first season. Yeah, I think that's why they did the first season. Was here's all the nuance. Here's the building into.
Now let's do an army.
Yeah,
let's bring her back. Let's bring back Elektra. Let's bring back everyone.
Let's bring back Stick, right?
No, he's dead.
I know. But, anything's possible with the Lazarus pit.
Yeah, Lazarus pit. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that was going to be an exciting one. Obviously, we're going to be waiting. A long time for that. But, yeah, I think it's been a good time for TV at the moment. Obviously, it's going to be exciting seeing what happens with movies in the next few months with Jurassic World. We've got Superman, like we said, obviously earlier in this, and then Fantastic Four, which is going to be my big one. But
wait, say that again.
Fantastic. But yeah, so we'll see how all that goes. In the meantime, Tater, thank you for joining as always.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to comment on quick before we tune out?
I mean, I guess I'll just say this generally to the audience. Everybody take care during these times. I know it can be difficult. I know it can be hard. Take care of one another. Invest into places and things that you love. That's all I can offer. So thank you all for listening.
There you go.
Give it a follow, give it a subscribe, whatever is going to best.
Yes. No, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your week. I hope you have a great time watching all these shows. It is a good time for movies and entertainment right now, I will say, despite some not being maybe up to par as others. But I think it's a great little time right now. It's a great little moment, and enjoy what you're enjoying. If you don't enjoy it, go somewhere else. And I'll see you guys soon for more. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.